Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to a video all about what I think of a game by the name of Project Warlock. This is a retro-styled FPS that puts you in the shoes of Angry McWarlockface. I genuinely don't know what his actual name is. In fact, I'm not even sure what the general story is for the setup behind Project Warlock, because it doesn't really tell you anything. It just drops you into the game and says, here's some things that want to bite your face off. You're an angry warlock with a laser staff. Just shoot stuff, idiot. Just shoot them in the face. That's not to imply that there isn't any underlying structure to Project Warlock, however. This is a game that's made up of a total of 60 levels, which are spread across 5 worlds. Your aim in each is to reach the end and defeat the big bad. Intriguingly, you don't actually have the ability to save during the course of a level. That is a luxury reserved only for return trips to the workshop, a place where you can upgrade your warlock with perks, new weapon upgrades, and additional spells. Instead, during the course of a level, you're forced to rely on a live system. You get 3 lives to begin with, lose one of them, it's back to the start of that particular level, lose all of them, and it's all the way back to the main menu itself, where yes, you have to start the entire run all over again from scratch. Sounds harsh, and I would certainly agree with you there, but in all honesty, it's never really a problem I had to deal with, because at the very least on standard difficulty, Project Warlock positively showers you with additional lives. If there's one thing that I do quite enjoy about Project Warlock, it's the fact that each individual world that you fight through does have its own particular look and feel, even extending as far to having its own unique roster of enemies. It's this kind of variety that means that Project Warlock doesn't give you much of a chance to get bored with it. By the time you feel as if a sequence of levels have played out, it's time to move on to the next world and the next new roster of enemies. And even then, in a pre-existing world, you'll find that the rate at which it doles out new enemies and weapons is actually pretty well paced. If anything, this particular world, which is based in Antarctica, won out as one of my favorites to play through, if solely for the fact that it's chock full of references to John Carpenter's The Thing, which is certainly a fine touchstone to have when you need an outpost filled with rampaging monstrosities. By this point, however, you'll have noticed that a fair chunk of Project Warlock is actually exceedingly dimly lit, and this prompts quite continual use of this spell here, which thankfully consumes no mana, but is quite necessary in a lot of situations in order to light the way. Now, in the case of the first 2 worlds you'll play through here, it actively works in their favor, the gloom adding to the atmosphere. You've got dank dungeons, you've got foreboding Antarctic outposts. It meshes quite nicely. Where it doesn't mesh nicely, however, is when you've got the same effect in play in somewhere like, I don't know, ancient Egypt. Let's see how that works out, shall we? It didn't take me very long to figure out that there was something off visually about the Egypt levels here. I mean, this is an outdoors section. It should not be this dim, and I shouldn't have to be squinting at my screen to figure out what exactly I'm moving towards. So as a result, I ended up digging into the graphical settings and discovering that there's actually quite a large variety of things you can screw around with. You can add retro shaders to make it look even more old school. You can add a little bit of CRT screen curve to the visuals themselves. And ultimately what I was looking for was a setting called Threshold, which, as you can see, makes a world of difference when you bring it down from its 0.1 default. It also made a tremendous difference with regards to spell usage, specifically that of the light spell, which I was leaning on quite heavily during the course of previous worlds. Now that I didn't have to use it to do something simple like illuminate what should be a perfectly well illuminated room to begin with, I could focus on the true nuts and bolts of Project Warlock, which is shooting a wide variety of interesting enemies in the face. Aiding you in this particular endeavor is, of course, a wide variety of interesting weaponry, some of which actually featuring downright thunderous sound design. Case in point, the minigun here, which after a bit of sustained fire will probably give you a little bit of a rattle in the eardrums, but at the very least also bring a smile to your face. Most, if not all, of the weapons here in Project Warlock are also subject to the possibility of upgrades. For this particular weapon, I could choose to transform it into a turret-based Gatling gun, which I'm pretty sure forces me to plant my feet, but will increase my damage dealing as a result, or I could transform it into a cannon that doesn't require to spin its barrel up before unleashing that torrent of bullets. It's an upgrade system which offers up an intriguing number of dilemmas for the player. For example, do you upgrade the melee axe to siphon health or mana from the enemies that you strike? You could even upgrade your staff to inflict increasing damage from continuous fire, or alternatively, have it fire icy bolts which will immobilize your enemies. Further to that, you'll also be able to purchase spells with those very same upgrade points, giving you tantalizing options such as a spell that will drop an orb that shoots lightning at your enemies, a spell that summons additional ammunition for your currently equipped weapon, and even a spell that lets you throw mana-infused dynamite. On top of all that, you've also got a leveling system, the experience for which can be gained by killing enemies and collecting treasure. Points can then be spent on strength, life, spirit, and capacity, and if you reach certain thresholds with those stats, you'll also be able to unlock the opportunity to buy perks, each of which offering you a little boost in a specific field, be it enemies dropping additional mana, pickups for shotgun ammo giving you additional shells, or just running really friggin' fast, as you may have seen in the preceding footage. The potential consequence of all of these upgrades that you can indulge in is that at some point the game might become a little bit, let's say, unbalanced. You can see the fruits of this in this situation right here, where I have a crapload of mana and an upgraded staff which deals increasing damage as long as you hold down the fire button. As a result, the Great Sphinx of Ancient Egypt is now on its second phase, and it can't do jack shit to me because this permanently stun locks its face. I don't ever recall feeling bad for a boss before, but man, that was a murder. After that particular discovery, I had to make a conscious effort not to use that weapon for the duration, because it was so easy. The mana depletion is negligible, the damage output is ridiculous, and as a result, it absolutely overshadows every other weapon you could potentially use in Project Warlock going forward. If you're not quite understanding what I'm trying to say here, is I had to voluntarily handicap myself in order to not make the game a complete and total pushover. I was actually surprised that something like that made its way through to the final release of the game, but then, after looking through the credits, I realized that a very small handful of people actually worked on the quality assurance for Project Warlock, meaning that it's entirely plausible that issues like that would slip through. And here we are as a result, with a laser gun in an airfield against giant evil-looking mechs, and all the while I'm thinking, I could just decimate all of these with my laser staff right now, but I'm trying not to, because I would actually like to have some kind of a challenge here. It's a shame, it really is, because for me there's so many things to enjoy about Project Warlock. I mean, visually, it's a looker, it really is. Once you get past those minor visual issues which are easily tweakable through the menu, you get to really enjoy what's gone into this. I mean, the lighting effects, the muzzle flashes from the weapons illuminating the level around you, the way that certain enemies break off into multiple pieces as you inflict more damage on them, the fact that that means that the attacks will change ever so slightly too. That stuff is friggin' fantastic. I love the weaponry, they're chunky as hell, both in look, sound, and feel, and I also really enjoy the music. I know I haven't been able to show much of that off during this, but trust me, if you get a chance, there's some really good tracks in here. Ultimately, however, it's overshadowed somewhat by the imbalance in the gameplay, and it's not just expressly related to the staff. I mean, even without the staff, you reach a point during endgame here where you are really friggin' OP. You get a spell that can quite easily recharge the ammo in any weapon. You get a perk that can cause enemies to drop additional mana for you, and things just stop being an issue, stop really being all that much of a fight, and that's the problem. You want that challenge, you crave that challenge, you want to feel like you're working for it, you want to feel like a badass, but you gotta play like a badass, and it doesn't quite pull it off, it doesn't quite stick the landing. So, on the back of all of that, would I recommend Project Warlock? Yeah, kinda. I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say stay away. It's still a relatively fun time. It's just not as fun as I think it could have been. And considering that the asking price for this is 10 quid, whatever your regional equivalent is on GOG right now, I still think that's a pretty reasonable price. Especially for something that does deliver a lot of very nice old-school visual pyrotechnics. I know how much of an oxymoron that sounds, but it is fun. It's just not going to stick in the mind very long once you're done with it. There are options to play on harder difficulty settings. There's only 3 in total. The easy setting gives you unlimited lives. The normal setting, which I'm playing on, you already know how that works. And the hardest difficulty gives you 1 life, and that's your lot, and the enemies deal double damage. I feel like they could do with maybe another 2 difficulties slotted in somewhere between easy and hard, if I'm going to be honest, but you never know. This is a modern digital age. There's opportunity for things to be slotted in at a later date, and if that does in fact turn out to be the case, maybe I'll come back. But as it stands for now, Project Warlock is one of them games, a one and done. I don't really feel much incentive to come back and try it again from scratch, maybe see how some of those other upgrades work. I just feel like I've had my fill. But in either case, if you're still intrigued by Project Warlock, you'll find a link to the GOG store page in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand yourself, maybe you'd like to see your name on screen, or maybe you'd like to gain early access to my videos before anyone else, well, in that case, you'll find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and if you really enjoyed yourself, feel free to hit that subscribe button and even ring that bell. Well, for all the good it seems to do these days. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.